Okay. All right, so we're gonna try to cover up some of the ground that we've been promising to talk about the last couple of classes we got, while going tonight. It's still gonna be a little different format. We got your laptops. We'll get to the spot where you're really gonna use them before I have you pull them out, but I think we're gonna get there tonight. We finish up the negotiation. We are going to make an assignment. Our topic for today, besides cleaning up some of the things that we've been talking about, we're going to talk about critical evaluation. That's the main topic that we're going to talk about. But in addition to that, we are going to start a conversation on compensation and benefits and strategy of compensation. Now, that I know in this class, some of us don't have any impact on compensation at all. We're victims of it. We get paid or we don't, and we're glad when we do, and we change jobs when we don't. But at some point in time, compensation may be a topic that you need to weigh in on because you are evaluating the pay plan, looking and having some discussion and some impact on some incentive packages. We talked about a few of those in class here with two of your companies, and some of you will own businesses where compensation and how you decide to set it up is going to be a critical thing. So I've got two of the handouts that you just picked out. One of them are what are compensation and benefits, and this is a document from HRCI, Human Resource Team, and the other one is entitled Compensation Strategy. This is more about, what's the thought process about how you establish your compensation program. And what I'd like you to do, these are longer handouts than normal. I'd like you to put a star at the top of those handouts so you remember which ones they are, and I would like you to read them. I'm not going to discuss them in class until after you have read them. And so we won't do that during class. I'm assigning that. And to compensate for your reading time, I'm going to target getting us out a few minutes early. So hopefully I can do both of those things, because we want to have a little conversation about compensation. It's always a dicey issue, always. And when we say compensation strategy, there has to be or should be a strategy on the part of the owners of the business of how do we want to pay. Do we want to pay fairly? Do we want to pay above, so we believe that we will retain people? Do we want to pay low and try to entice people to want to work here for other reasons? I'll give you examples, and we'll talk about examples of all of those. But for starters, Zappos. Some of you have heard of the company called Zappos. They're headquartered in Las Vegas. If you order shoes from Zappos online, you get them tomorrow. You don't have to go to the shoe store. If you don't know what size you like, you order 3 sizes, one big, one your size, and one small, and they will allow you to return the other 2 that you don't keep for free. So you don't even have to worry about how to do. You have to drop it off somewhere. You drop it off at a FedEx drop-off spot. So you have to pay for going to that, but you don't have to pay for doing it. And so Zappos, I don't know how they afford to do that, but I also know that Zappos pays pretty much below normal warehousing pay, and they try to keep pace with casino pay in Las Vegas, and you have heard that that's in general pretty bad. The Las Vegas has an awful lot of entry-level pay positions, and so they get by with paying reasonably low. Now, there are exceptions to that. Las Vegas Fire Department pays about double what the St. George Fire Department pays. A lot of nurses that live in St. George drive to Las Vegas, nurse for 3 or 4 days, come back and spend the weekends back here with their family and make more money after housing in Vegas, after travel to Vegas, than IHC pays here. So pay structure is just all over the map. It's weird. But Zappos is a company that doesn't pay well. But people love to work there because it's a blast, it's fun. They make a party out of work somehow, and they have a community of people that they try to allow you to live right there, walking distance from on Fremont Street. They're kind of at the end of Fremont Street as you headed west. They've redeveloped a lot of that area. A lot of it was a slum at one point in time. It was, all the crack houses and stuff were kind of there, and high police presence there, and not a very good area. But Zappos said, here's an opportunity for us to buy property fairly inexpensive for in-town Vegas. It was in a ghetto, right? And so, and they and other investors have kind of pumped money into that area and made it a livable place, and they try to make it affordable for a lot of their employees. That's a strategy, right? So part of the compensation is that you have a fun time. So, how do you put a value on that? It's different for different people. I would have a hard time going home and explaining to my family that I'm getting paid lousy because I had fun at work. But other people are fine with that. And so it's to each their own type of thing regarding pay strategy. Do you want to pay what the competitors pay? I've just had this conversation with a company that I'm doing some work with in Chattanooga, Tennessee. It's one of the larger, they're the fourth largest builder of solar farms in the U.S. So for the power companies type thing, solar farms, and they're bidding on a job in Illinois right now that it looks like they're going to get. The Inflation Reduction Act was signed by President Biden the day before yesterday, and it's going to be an inflation rising act, in my opinion. But that's a political point of view. But one of the things that it's requiring is that all solar energy companies pay the apprenticeship and journeymen to be on the job, and that's not a bad thing. What that's saying is we're requiring competency in a workforce. That's not a bad thing in and of itself. Tied to that is the fact that the unions are Democrat, and the unions are pushing that because they want to provide schools to make apprenticeship and journeymen out of the installers that build these solar farms. And these are not the residential ones that put a panel on your roof. These are the ones that put in thousands of solar panels. And those are always at voltage. As soon as the sun hits them, light hits them, you put them up at night and you're not going to get zapped. Put them up in the morning and you get killed. Because lockout tagout is really hard on those, so you need training. And you need to kind of know what you're doing. So this company is, I said all that, this company is trying to figure out how they want to pay on this job in Illinois. If this legislation is signed, if they have to have 1 out of 4 employees as a journeyman master electrician, that changes the cost of the job. Master electricians in Illinois make $37 an hour if they are starting. It's brand new. If they've been with the company a long time, they've been promoted up. Mason Davis pay law for contractors is at $37 an hour. The union wage is $47 an hour for the same job. You have to pay union dues and all that kind of stuff, but you get paid more. And that amount of pay difference on the job, this job they're bidding is $8 million. $10 an hour is $8 million on that job. So they're having a discussion strategically, what do they want to pay on that job? Do they want to get the job and then not be able to put the workforce there? Because they're not going to move people to Illinois to do this job. They're going to hire local people, right? They're going to have their own travelers that are part of the anchor team, but then they're going to hire locally if they are awarded that job. So these papers are about those conversations. How do you decide where you want to pay? Because in this case, their bid is predicated on what they're going to have to pay people. And there's enough labor hours in the bid, and this is welcome to big business. This is the way they all have to think and operate and consider compensation and bonuses. And part of the benefit package, the company right next door, Vasion, they got a basketball court in the middle of that building. If you didn't know that, drive slow by it or go around the back of it. You can see in the 2 garage doors in the middle of the business go right to their basketball court. The offices are all around the basketball court. They're quiet. So you don't hear the basketball court. There are 4 pickleball courts in there also inside, and they have vending machines with every possible video game on them that you can imagine. They're just banks of thousands of video games that you can start tournaments and have ongoing competitions and so forth. And anybody that works there can stop what they're doing and go play basketball, go shoot, pick up a game of horse with somebody, shoot some baskets, or just vent for a little bit if you want to. They have breaks, and you see people walking around here when you're finding your parking places. A lot of times those walkers aren't from campus here; they're from Vasion, and they talk business while they walk, or they talk, casual or whatever they choose. But they believe that ends up in more productivity. These are people that are mostly salaried, not all. They have some hourly workers that are in that they're invited to that. Of course, they have soda machines and snacks and things like that are available all the time. So that's not free. That costs Vasion money, but it's not tied to one person's hourly pay. So, but that's a strategy started maybe by, I don't know who started it. Facebook picked it up. People working for Facebook. That's part of the experience is having this community with the people you work with. Busy, that hangar right there behind Vasion. It's old airplane hangar that's still standing. Busy is in the process of breaking ground for their own building here, and Isaac Barlow is the owner of Busy, and he has contract rights on most of the property up here on the mesa, and his idea is he wants this to be a whole tech community. You've heard that, seen it in the papers, and read about it a little bit. An interesting thing, as he bought some of the land that Busy is on that hangar and so forth, it goes down into a gully, and then y'all know that Temple Trail that goes around side, so you can go to the old Temple Quarry, and you can take that trail. It turned out that the land that he bought included a piece across that trail, and then at the top of the hill, it included a little triangle at the top of the hill. You can't get to. You got to hike to it, but he owns it. And they were looking at the deed and at the land survey, and he's going, "What's this piece of land?" And it's up there. You can't drive up there. You can't do anything. So it's what a great place for a zip line. And so he's looking at the canyon that he bought, which used to be the city dump. At least part of it did, and saying this would be cool to put mountain bike trails through, and have biking trails that connect up the trail, goes around the campus and around the mesa, and goes down into some terrain and technical riding, and let's put a zip line coming down into here, just be fun, and he's doing that to attract workers because his competitors don't have a zip line, right? So some people might go to work for him because they can mountain bike at lunchtime and they can take their family down the zip line once or twice, and they would go to work for a company that had that environment. So I'm not saying that you need to put in a zip line. I'm not saying you need to do any of those things, but I'm saying there's two companies that are right here at St. George that's what they are and are planning on doing. And they're doing that as a recruiting tool for human resources. Because what they're hoping for is that if part of the benefits that you get is friends, then you're not going to quit. You're going to tend to stay there because your buddies work there. And you don't want to let your buddies down. And they became your buddies because you were mountain biking together. And that's not bulletproof, but it's sound psychology. And even if they do leave, they're going to spread that. And they're going to spread that philosophy, which is going to put some pressure on wherever they go here in St. George to lighten up a little bit, have some fun, get a midnight bowling league together or something that's off the wall that is unique to your company, and maybe that'd make a difference. Now, ultimately, these benefits are interesting, and you'll see if you read those articles, which is your assignment, you'll see that Europe already has some differences in what their requirements are. And if you wind up at some point in time being international in your reach, meaning you're managing a team or a plant somewhere abroad, anywhere abroad, those places may have different laws than we have here in the United States. And we automatically think that they are behind us. That's not necessarily true. And it may be from a business perspective that it's more oppressive with some of their laws are, But from a human point of view, it might be of greater value. When I first took over our plant in Munich, Germany, we had production facility, electronic assembly area, we had research and development, substantial amount of research and development, cancer research type of engineers. And I'm looking at the payroll, I'm just looking at the operating expenses for the plant, and I'm making decisions about what we want to do to try to, tighten it up and improve what we're doing, and just make sure that we're on board with our operation in the U.S. And I see these people that are administrative assistants that are on the payroll, and they're making huge amounts of money. And I'm going, what is with this? Why are these people, I had 9. I had 9, and they were women. I had 9 women that were making really high amounts of money for what they were doing. They were making triple or quadruple what they should have made at that job. And what I found out is Germany has a law that if your spouse works at a company and they die or are disabled, you have to hire their spouse at the wage they were making. Now they're not qualified to do the job, so I had engineers that were in their 60s that had died of heart attacks, 9 of them. Might not have been heart attacks, I don't know. Their beer's pretty strong. I don't know what it was it took about. But there were 9 of them over a period of 3 or 4 years, and every one of them we had hired their wives who weren't able to do engineering, but we had to pay them engineering wage. That's a German law. In France, you'll see that companies have to provide lunch. They expect, that's a law, it's not you got it. So if you don't have a company cafeteria where all of your employees can go and have lunch at your company, then by law, you have to give them a voucher at local restaurants for them to go and eat lunch. Now there can be rules to that. It can be no martinis, or it can be a dollar amount, and it could be contractual with Papa John's, and you go there and you get lunch. And you don't have to do that, but you have to be provided the vouchers. It's a law. It's a federal law in France. So if you wind up putting a sales office in Paris, be aware that the rules for employee compensation and benefits may not be the same. They all pretty much get summers off. I mean, they don't really, but holidays, you get a month of holidays or something in most European countries, and they do it because they believe that, human beings, we need to live first and work second. And there's more of that mindset in Europe than there is in the United States. And in general, I thought that made them live longer until I saw all the dead engineers we have. But it's not a bad thing. It's just part of compensation. And as we mature as a world, and the world's a flat world already, and as we have offices all around, pretty soon, July 24th becomes a holiday in more places than just Utah. We have influence, on other places with the way we pay and incentivize and so forth. So I want you to read about that, think about that, and we'll have some discussion about what you have read. Because and I want you to come prepared with a comment or a question as we enter class on Tuesday. I want to have a little bit of a visit about compensation and benefits from your point of view. I'm hoping that these articles will broaden your mind a little bit. You've been wrestling with this problem for your career, entire career, looking at how do we retain, and how do we not overpay, how do we not underpay, how do we fair pay, and most companies fail on some of that. It's hard to get it right, and it's really hard to get incentive programs right. It's really easy to get them wrong. And if you are dealing with salespeople, we talked about sales a little bit last class. If you're not dealing with salespeople, shame on you. Your company needs them. Get your sales engine fixed up and primed and working. You'll make more money as a company. But bear in mind, as you manage salespeople, they're a different breed no matter which dog they are. They're a different breed. And they have to be. They have to be successful. And for them to be successful, they are wired in a unique way, I'll say. the successful one. Now, for different types of products, you need different skill sets. So I'm not saying that all salesmen are alike, because they are not. And we wouldn't want them to be, and that wouldn't be effective. But what we can say is that when we hire a salesperson, they are hired to represent the company in the best possible way they can do that. That means we want them to spot good opportunities and go for them and close them. We want them to work the opportunities, the bids. This company that's putting in a bid in Illinois that I just talked to you about. This is a huge bid. The last bid that they bid on was a solar project in Los Angeles that was a $2.5 billion bid. So we're talking about enormous bids that these companies. So the sales team that went out and did all the work to see if they, and it's open. We don't know if they got it yet or not. Somebody will get that, and the team that put that together should be rewarded. You know, right? I don't know if they get a 10% commission on that. 2.7 billion. That'd be kind of nice. I don't think so. You figure out the package, but what you are hiring is people that are capable of going landing business like that. Now, that's a two-edged sword. What you need to expect as their manager, you're not the salesperson. You are the business person. You are the owner of the company. You are the head of vice president of operations or something. And these sales teams are feeding you. And so what will happen is they will work you just as hard as they work the potential customers. And we think they're bad guys when they do that. They're going to wrangle with us on their commission structure, how they get paid, when they get paid, how, you know, whether you make their yacht payment for them or not, if they get a company Ferrari or whatever kinds of things. They're going to work you. And don't get mad about when the salespeople work you, because get mad if they're not. Because if they're not working you, they're not working the customer base either. If they have the skills to work the customer base, they can't help it. They're going to work you. Just don't get mad about it. See it coming, expect it, and then negotiate. Work with them. Don't disincentivize them. And by the way, throwing more money at a salesperson is not necessarily the best way to motivate them. They will all tell you that is, but the data says it's not. What happens is there's not a direct correlation with earning and performance. There's a certain amount of luck, first of all, in sales, and no point in giving a person a big old bonus for luck, you know. But on the other hand, if you take it away from them, so what demotivates, what motivates, it's mostly unfairness that demotivates. When something isn't fair, and we'll talk about that also after you've read those articles, because at the end of the day, it's the fairness gauge that we have in our heart. We don't steal pencils from our boss if they're paying us well. And when they're paying us in something in our gauge doesn't seem fair about what they're paying, then we'll take the pencils from the copy. And not necessarily grand theft, but that's a little way of adjusting ourselves, and most human beings do it. The FBI that looks at business fraud says 85%. That's what the local guy told me personally. 85% of our employees will steal from you. And the 15 that won't is because they believe you're really watching. And I hope that's wrong. I hope our moral compass is a little bit better than that for most of us. But that's what the FBI told me, is that, you know, you have to have the system set up so people don't want to steal from you, and so that that you are watching close enough that it will keep the honest people honest. And so, you know, that's a kind of a side note, I think, in our conversation that may be relevant at some point in time to you. Let's finish up our conversations about business acumen with a short 7 or 8 minute video, and we'll be able to finally check that one off. If I can get my password there. 7 minutes.
Peanuts. I got peanuts. Fresh roasted peanuts, $1. Peanuts. Peanuts. Peanuts.
There you go, business peanuts. Yep. Thank you. Yeah. Hey, have you ever seen street vendors in action? I mean, these guys know their business pretty well. I found that a lot of people oftentimes have this idea of starting a business. Let me share a business idea that I've had and have you be thinking about yours. My wife and I, my wife's Karen, we have 4 boys, ages 25 to 18. And my wife, about the time that my 18-year-old son was born, we found that she had cancer, had lymphoma. And so as a result of the radiation and chemo, we weren't able to have more kids. Now you might think that 4 was enough, but we still wanted that little girl, so we decided to adopt, and we adopted Isabella. She was actually, her birth parents were in San Diego here. Now, once we adopted Isabella, any guess on what happened? Wife got pregnant, we had a girl, of course. This is Noelle. We call her Hurricane Noelle because she's a live wire. And so this is my family. Yeah, the guy in the top right's hair is a little bit longer now. So that's kind of, so as a result of this adoption process, we kind of discovered it's expensive, can take years to go through, and takes a lot of paperwork. So a business idea that my wife and I have had, and this is probably more of a hobby than a business, is that someday we'd love to help people navigate through that adoption process. So that's kind of our business idea. Now, here's what I'd like you to do. Would you get to the person next to you, just turn to a neighbor, and tell them about a business you have thought of starting. Just take about a minute each and share with them, a business concept. Go ahead and do that if you would. Now, here are 5 business drivers: cash, profit, assets, growth, and people. Now, let me give you a way to remember these. If you'd stand up where you are. I know it's after lunch. We need to get the blood moving. It's kind of a handshake dance routine thing here. So our 5 drivers. Cash. What's the universal sign for cash? Yeah, do that with me. Here's cash. All right, profit. We talked about 2 things to impact profit. What are the 2? Sales up or expenses down. So do that with me. That's profit. Asset. Give me a good fist pump like you mean it. Growth. We want it going up. And then people close to the heart. So let's see it. Cash, profit, assets, growth, people. A little faster. Cash, profit, assets, growth. All right. Go ahead and have a seat. Statement for Japanese Airlines. They were founded in about 1953, so right after World War II, and kind of in their effort for company reconstruction and also to make an important point, they have this mission statement. The Japan Airlines Group, as an overall airport transfer enterprise, will act as a bridge to bring peoples, their cultures, their hearts closer together, and thus contribute to world peace and prosperity. Sounds pretty grandiose, doesn't it? I mean, as mission statements are. But can they have somewhat of an impact on world peace? If you look at the way they're defining it, bringing people and cultures and hearts closer together, I think they can have a part in bringing about world peace. Here's the problem. January 19th, 2010, Japanese Airlines files for bankruptcy. So here's my point about margin and mission. Even if you have a phenomenal mission, if you can't fund that mission, there will be a limit to how far you can go with your mission. At the end of the day, we're selling something unique. If you sell something unique, people will be willing to pay for it. They'll see value in it. For example, Coca-Cola, you might think, well, hey, it's just sugar water. I've got a sister who, if she can't get Diet Coke at a restaurant, she'll just take water. Has no interest in, I see somebody nodding, has no interest in anything but Diet Coke. So she has real brand insistence for Coke. Apple, people will wait in lines for days to get the new version of an Apple phone or an iPad or whatever the new gadget might be. So these companies are selling something unique. And if you're not unique, you better be cheap. So let's look at companies that have lower profit margins. The first one might surprise you. ExxonMobil, 8%. Now, if you looked at any of the oil companies, they actually have lower margins than the average company. I heard somebody yell Walmart out earlier. Walmart's profit margin, 3.7%. Any guess on the 1.7% company? It's also a retailer. Costco, 1.7% profit margin. Now, I love Costco. I call them the $300 store. You can't go into Costco and get out without spending at least a few $100. You don't go in to buy a slice of pizza at the front because you'll see a case of batteries that you can't live without and something else. Now what's interesting with Costco is Costco really is a cost club. When you go buy something at Costco, they sell it to you for what it costs them to get it in the store. The only reason they make that 1.7% is the membership fee they charge you. So literally, you are paying for the right to go buy things at cost when you go to Costco. Now, why the low margins for these companies? Okay, they sell volume. They have to sell a volume if they want to make any money. But why are their margins so thin? Are they selling something unique? They're selling commodities. So commodity is something that's ubiquitous, that's universal out there. If you're going to buy a gallon of milk, you can get it at Walmart, you can get it at Target, you can get it at Costco, you can get it, at Kroger's, Dan's. And so they're selling commodities, therefore it's not unique, it better be cheap. Now, Cal, can you personally in your role, impact profit? Let me give you a couple of ideas on this. One, anything you can do to sell more. We heard that last time. Guess what the second one is? Anything you can do to reduce expenses. Third, I would suggest that anything you can do to help employees understand how their daily decisions impact the financials of the organization. So help them define what's down. So let me have you stand up if you would. How are you going to remember these 5 business drivers? Let me hear it and see it. So what are they? Cash, profit, assets, growth, and people. All right, thank you.
I think that wraps up business acumen. If we have time at the end, I have another short video clip that I want to show that is 7 businesses that are almost always profitable in the United States. And it's interesting, so business acumen is about what he just said, right? It's about having an understanding on how cash is impacting our company. Are we forcing ourselves into low margin corners? If we are, that's fine. How are we going to get the volume to make it up? If we have something unique, why does somebody come up with caviar pizza? They come up with caviar pizza because nobody else has it. So what's your margin on caviar pizza? You can charge a different amount for it. And because I don't have a good frame of reference about what that's worth. So it's a specialty thing. I pay more for a specialty thing. So taking a commodity product and making it a specialty thing in some way is the only way you can increase the, what was that? Margin, right? So that's part of our business acumen, is having that default thought process of how do we help a company become aware of their costs, aware of their potential of profits, aware of their marketing to groups that will allow margins versus commodity products competing with Costco. And by the way, what he said about Costco is 90% true. Costco is experimenting and moving in the direction of having more Kirkland things that are not commodities, that are unique. Think of Christmas decorations, a few things that, Christmas lights are Christmas lights, and that's something of a commodity, but they'll make them special. They'll flash in the color you can't buy somewhere else. And the neighbor goes, "Where'd you get that turquoise Christmas strand of lights?" "Oh, I got it at Costco." Okay, that put a bigger margin on it because it's turquoise. Everybody else has red and green Christmas balls. And so now we got a special color that we put on. So but that's a thought process that some buyer in Washington for Costco said, what can we do to try to get some margins on some stuff while we're pushing all the rest of the items through at cost? And there's unique to still a lot of stuff they have there. You all know that. And we shop there. But our point on business acumen, we read 18 things that we can get stronger at. Last class, we took the whole class just about to go through that. Pay attention to that. In your own game, make your own little checkbox on those 18 things and say, rank yourself. Which ones are the ones you're strongest at right now? Which ones are the ones you're weakest at right now? Brush up a little bit on the ones you're weak at, but remember, play to your strengths. The stuff you're strongest at right now, do more of that. The stuff you're strong at, that you're already strong. Get world class, really, really pour it on the areas that you're strong. So that is kind of almost wrapping up our business acumen, except for 7 businesses that almost never lose money. And I think that you'll be intrigued about that anyway. We're now gonna do a negotiation exercise, kind of wrapping up on negotiation. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 right now, so hurry up and do this before somebody else comes in the room. And because I want a buyer and a vendor. I want you to split up in 2x2s differently than you have done before. So you're gonna be negotiating with somebody probably new that you haven't done to do that. Since we have 10 people in the room, we're gonna count to 5 twice.
2,
1, 2, 4, 5.
Okay, so find your other person in a minute, and so the ones are going to negotiate with each other. We have a buyer and a vendor, and this is you're working for a company, and you're either a buyer for the company or you're a vendor trying to sell to that company. I have a sheet that says buyer up front, and I have a sheet that says vendor up front. Do not take both pieces of paper. On the front of the piece of paper is information that is known to both parties. On the back of your sheet of paper is stuff that's known only to you. So this is, what does the company know that the suppliers don't? What do the suppliers know about their business that the company doesn't know? Remember, Herb Cohen says information is one of the critical things in negotiation. We have information that they don't have, they have information that we don't have, the person with the most information wins. So I don't know if that will happen in this particular case, but I want you to, everybody's gonna have the same scenario. You are gonna act, you're gonna read the discussion, then you're gonna flip it over and read the secret instructions to you, and then you're gonna start negotiation with the person that you've been paired up with. So move around, get one of these after you decide. So meet your partner first, decide who's gonna be the buyer, who's gonna be the vendor, and then come over here and get the appropriate sheet of paper. Go off somewhere where you can have your negotiations. If you want to do it in the hallway, that's fine. Go off and do your negotiations, and after you've negotiated, come back and we're going to talk about it.
You'll buy?
Was it Israel Bartlow that you knew from Busy Busy?
Yeah.
Oh, he just moved to town. He used to live
Which
at the
one's
apartment
one?
office. So before he got settled, I used to go over.
I guess I'd be the buyer.
Isaac bought it.
Oh, very good.
Isaac, yeah.
Yeah, I actually did. I had to replace his sink on Christmas. His faucet line bursted when he turned it on. So I remember on Christmas.
We can come over here.
Oh, okay. Yeah, he was talking about apartment complex before, and he was saying, well, I want to see something with like our company managing it. So he just
Okay.
builds it and manage it. But I guess he's not doing that.
No, he's doing it. Stay locked in with it.
Okay.
Keep him in your network.
Yeah, he lived there for a little bit. Maybe he was on the houseboat or something. I mean, he was the only one with like $80,000 vehicle where he would walk a tenth of a mile to park in the garage. Didn't want
That's cool.
to, leave it out. But yeah, he was living in our place.
Yeah, he works right over there.
Yeah,
He owns it.
Yeah, busy. Yeah, he told me about it when I went up briefly. I did some work orders for him. He's like, oh yeah, something like busy. Here's an app. I didn't know that he was the owner of it. I just heard of it, and you said the name.
And he's
so-
got options on almost all his land. Yeah.
Yeah, I just looked him up in the software, and I was like, is that who you're talking about?
That's the guy. Yeah.
Cool. I thought he worked there. I didn't know he
No,
was the owner.
oh no, he's the owner. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's unfortunate. Go to lunch.
That's good lunch.
Go to lunch.
production is slowing down, and I wanted to let you know in advance because, we're having to do a price increase, a small price increase, but I'm really incentivizing you to do a large bulk order because we will save you that much cost in shipping. So, and that way you'll be guaranteed to get your motors because we are going to be slowing down, and I just want to get the motors that you need.
Can we make sure that those motors that are coming look more pleasing to the customer and almost sounds good to where they're
They don't, well, they don't really give a crap what it looks like. 'Cause they don't see it. Yeah.
not wrong there. Not wrong there.
Sorry, I ate Indian food just earlier, so if I like smell spicy, I ate it right before I got here, so sorry. Anyway.
Okay. Can we make sure that those trucks are going to be coming to us with those motors on time?
Yeah, especially that's what we want to do. We want to combine your shipments into large shipments. You're not going to have like a little shipment here, a little shipment there. That will make it so that you have to worry about small shipments here and there. We'll get you one large shipment, get it there on time. There is a small price increase, but it'll be offset by just one shipment.
Okay. One problem that we have is that we need to minimize, unfortunately, our needs in those motors. We want to not have as many of them. And we want to make sure that I'm not as prepared as you are.
I'm not. It was hard for me to read, especially when they were talking about it. Why do you want to not have as many? Because your customers will need them.
Because we are. I'm not sure if I like. So, like I'm not sure what not to say, what to say.
I know that's the trick.
Alright? Because really what's happening with the company is they are thinking of letting go of one level of management. So they're trying to not I think I'm a character, whoopsie.
It's okay.
So they are losing business, they are trying to get rid of employees, trying to tighten up on everything because they're just not doing well and they're incentivizing certain branches or bonuses for certain branches and other branches cost cuts. What was it for yours?
Well, I'm not going to tell you any of my secrets, but they, I just can tell you that, so something that you can have that will help you with having less people in your company is we have this awesome new communication system. Like it does all of your troubleshooting, like customer relations, all this stuff. It's a brand new technology that we have where if you have any issues with your motors, it's a troubleshooting customer service, anything that you need. It's like an instant answer for everything that's happening. So that way you're not having to have as many employees working as hard to find this system. So that's just another benefit.
Yeah, that is a big benefit. That's what we're looking for.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, let me tell you one more thing. There is we have a new motor coming out, and you know how high energy cost is right now.
Uh-huh.
This cuts your energy cost 17% for every month. But each motor costs 50 cents more than before. But that's nothing when you can figure like you're using this motor for years. And then energy just pricing is going up. So 50 cents is nothing.
No good?
So you have the option of a new energy efficient motor, better communications, better customer service. And you can just buy it all up front now, or in a couple of large shipments this year. That's all we need.
Wow. You're making a good.
So it's about the crust, you know, you're going green.
And you can give me free pizza.
Something to put out.
Yeah.
I think we can make a deal on that only if
Especially with air conditioning.
not, we just don't need as much inventory as we used to order before.
Well, it says that you have small frequent shipments that you need to reduce. So let's just, instead of doing like 5 shipments a month, let's just do like 1 larger shipment every 2 months. That way you don't have a huge inventory, but you have what you need. And we're not wasting a lot of shipping money.
Let's do it.
Okay, let's do this.
We got it. We got the deal done.
He says, nope. Are you going? What time is it? That's why I got this up. So I'm going out tonight.
Yeah, man.
I'm going to see.
I'm gonna be there at about like 9:30.
Okay. I told some of my friends, I was like, yeah, my class gets banned up. Let's go check it out.
Let's do it, man. Let's do it.
You're
Freaking-
interrupting myself.
I thought the sale was done.
I mean, it is, but I didn't say to buy it.
Is it a Skype call or is it?
They haven't signed the paper yet.
Okay, we're good.
You can't do solid Yeah, if we
The cells and
buy it. Buy it. Would you be part of the buy
It said what?
I was like, bro, I'm about to jump ship.
What was the buyer's name? I didn't.
You got to leave the company. He's like, I'm out.
Oh, really?
I'm looking for
That's what I'm saying right now.
opportunities.
Well, the other side of the story was that they were, if you don't sell it, they're going to be like,
Northern Russia?
Goose Bay.
Yeah, he's, yeah.
Everywhere, so it could have been like Siberia.
Right.
It
Right.
might be this base area.
PowerPoint, if you can do slides and import it.
My experience.
You're super tech savvy, so I was like,
No, it's freaking. And if I'm below 30, it's 40.
He has found it to. He does? I have no idea.
That's what they keep it. That's what a sports team, if you're a quarterback, that's what your agents do. It's interesting how
And you can keep too.
So you must be a few. And I think you gotta go twice. This is a one-time deal. Well, you're gonna go somewhere, I think that's, which one gives you the best staff on your resume? Is it money, the work itself, and then where does it go? You know,
You can always use this reliable rag to start doing their own motors and stuff like that. I can always do 70,000 shots at 30,000 pin. Maybe just 30,000 would be 60,000. So
Yeah, it's in contracts that I don't.
Alright, yeah, so, interesting.
are you doing stand-up tonight?
Yep.
What time?
Everything, there's
9:30? At number 2? That's late?
I think it is.
You get around town, places don't even open until 9.
I know.
So yeah, we bonded.
Right, you wanna do one carload, truckload, balls, and,
make sure that our parts are quality.
Are we just supposed to keep all these papers? Are we on break?
Are you done?
Yeah.
It is break time, now that you say it. So if you finish your negotiation, you certainly can go to break, and don't go to break until you finish, but finish and take a break, and then we'll come back from break. I'll hear about what we're doing with motors, kind of hear what kind of your outcomes were from your negotiation, and then we're gonna move on with another thing about negotiation, and then the next time. So take a break.
I don't need to start looking into like how to integrate again, like
I'm saying I'm agreeing to a higher
it
unit
didn't cost thousands of dollars.
number of units and see what we cost. I'm speaking more than that. Because of where you're gonna save a little bit more, or I'm gonna get some savings. You're gonna deliver by the truckload to my own depots. And then
No, it's the best.
What?
we're dropping off, pick up.
You own,
Not the most of the year that I go.
okay.
All of the winter, fall, and spring is awesome. Summer sucks. I don't go in the summer.
Next time you show up during the summer, I know this is a program, so.
I would leave in the summer. No,
Oh, that's
I would leave in the
awesome.
summer.
Nobody's ever done that because I've done this exercise a lot.
Well, some of us are hoping to a home, so not, you don't have like a second property, you know?
Because that's what I'm talking about too. I'm talking about moving.
There's other virtual
Have you been over to the whole side, like, Naples?
I went about
out
their
that type of
Texas
stuff.
meets. Oh, that's,
Kind of created
Where?
all the
From
control
like Texas
testing
and
for
Florida
laws
meets.
and
It was in
Oh,
Florida.
okay.
It was
Just the panhandle.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Well, so like, I told you, I'm to the bottom of it, cause it's the both sides.
We definitely like, suppliers to be very attentive to us. And I treat us special since we are special. Cool. That's good.
Yeah, well, I think it's pretty much, but it's a strong upon us so late in the week as they're kind of giving a lot of people leads. But,
Do they sneak a job in?
I think the jobs are released for 304. Some of the released, they want everything cut up and processed real fast, and they want everything that's city or something through the top. So when I was a few out there,
Everybody or just the machine operators?
I would say that, well,
I think the machine operators
Well,
are the
those
ones that pretty much would go looking to be in this, but the funny thing is that the other two don't have babysitters, so they just can't. So it's just me out there tomorrow or on Saturday. And this Mike comes out and runs the drill.
he's, I don't know where he was.
So you can't work 7 to make somebody.
I wish I had that power. But it can be exhausting. It's 3 Saturdays, and then we have Memorial Day. It was, like every Saturday
let's hear a little bit how you did. Everybody's not quite back yet, but almost. Let's hear a little bit about some of your results. How about, well, let's hear about all of you. We had 5 teams. Team 1. What happened to Team 1?
What was it, 2070 per unit?
2075 per unit
2075
increase, 48% increase, and we're still doing the just-in-time deliveries.
with better product and the new better customer service for if we have interest.
Okay.
And shrimp scampi.
I heard you take him to lunch right away, right?
The
So,
same dinner shop.
did you both kind of feel you won? Ish?
Ish.
Yeah.
Ish? I mean, both yielded on that?
Well,
team?
I'm not getting sent to Goose Bay, so I'm happy about that.
That's true, because the first thing you did was Google Goose Bay, right? And said,
Nope, didn't even look.
Didn't even look.
I just knew I didn't want it.
Yeah, okay, I can see that. You know, a lot of guys would go ahead and Google it, you know, and say, I
Gotta be
don't,
cold if the geese are there.
it's, whatever it is, it's Canada.
He was kind of locked up tight in the beginning. He wasn't giving me any information.
Oh, really?
No information at all.
So this is a hard thing, and that information is proprietary, you know? I mean, it is secret to your company, kinda, but how do you come up with a good conclusion if you don't?
Well, he kind of gave away as he was reading. He was like,
Oh.
I think I work for a bunch of. I was like, all right, well, that's a clue, right?
All salesmen learn to read upside down, by the way.
Right.
That's
Right. And then he wasn't really budging on anything, and then he was like, well, you know, what did he say? It was something that he let me in the door about sales or something. So I was asking about Reliable. How's Reliable doing? What's going on there? Well, you know, I don't know. We'll see. It wasn't a lot, so I just asked him. I was like, look, we're trying to increase our sales to you guys by, 48, 50%, and it just went from there.
So,
Kind of pitched me on the new product and,
Right.
and their new
Okay.
customer support system and, we can take a little bit of a price increase.
because you're getting something for it.
As
Yeah.
long as we're getting that as well as the guarantee of our on right-away shipments,
Okay.
whatever they wanted to call it, the no inventory effectively.
All right, so that was Team 1. Team 5, how'd you guys do?
Well, I don't know how Larry felt about it. It was pretty hard to negotiate, but I did not settle for a price increase, but I did settle for buying double the amount of units and not getting the just-in-time deliveries. But I really harped on the better quality parts, and because we needed them to be more attentive to our needs and problems and stuff like that. And we were gonna set up a quality control department and test the units, and if they were bad, we'd leave them on the dock, and when they came back around with the truck, so we're not paying for delivery, they're gonna deliver it to in a route, all of our,
Okay. So all 6 of you,
yeah, so on their way back, they can stop and pick up all the ones that were poor quality, no additional charge to us,
Okay.
and do a full refund on them.
So you kind of change it up a little bit with something out of the box that wasn't on a flip page at all. Yeah,
Transportation,
Yeah.
knowledge into it, and
okay.
so.
Well, we'll be interested to see how
Very
Larry
good.
feels. Here he is, we're gonna put him on the spot. How did you feel, Larry? He said you were hard to negotiate with.
He said I was hard to negotiate.
Yeah, he did,
Yeah,
yeah.
It can't be because I'm like physically drained today,
Oh.
emotionally drained today. He probably could have said anything. I'd have said sure. Will you shut up now?
One of those days.
Why would you tell him?
I told him kind of what we were doing and stuff. And
I couldn't get him up on price, so I think I failed there pretty good. As much as I pushed for it, he just wouldn't go up on price. But I doubled the amount he's getting from us, so.
Okay, so there are, when we talk about compensation, there's other things besides just price. Now, you're gonna have to go back and sell that to your team,
Right.
so you gotta make yourself look like a winner.
Yeah.
I mean, really, that's part of our job part of the negotiation is, that I mentioned this in class once, part of negotiation is to make the other party help them prepare their victory speech. Because they gotta go back to their boss, and you want them to go back and make them feel like they won. And so you might have to help them figure out what to say, while you didn't yield on price. You got some other stuff that he could go talk to his boss. You gave him double the volume. So, that's a win, and you didn't want to do that necessarily. But secretly you probably did, because you got the price, you held the price, so you
Yeah.
got a pretty good deal
Well,
on
then
that.
delivering the parts.
You got delivery out of it, so that's definitely a bottom line, that'll hit the bottom line, that's profit, so that's good. So team two, where'd you end up at?
So that's,
Yeah, that's
you just couldn't say no. It went really well.
Okay, how'd you end up?
So we decided to cut all of the short-term shipments from 5 a month to I think was it 2 or 3 shipments every 2 or 3 months. So one
Yeah.
shipment a month instead of 1 a week. And that would offset the cost in shipping for the increase in price. But I talked him into making sure that he ordered plenty. He said they wanted to reduce their inventory a little bit, but I told him not to do that because our production was going to be slowing down, and we wanted to make sure they had enough motors to last them. So,
Good job. Okay, but you got a good deal at the end. You got kind of what your supply needs. You got, right?
Yeah. We were looking for recyclable, I think it was. Consumer important, so stuff that's more, it looks better for the customer and also good for the environment. And we just had to pay 50 cents extra for it.
for
But
the new motors, yeah.
yeah.
I sold them those.
Yeah.
Because energy prices are increasing all the time, and we don't know when it's going to stop. But 50 cents per motor once, that runs for years at a 17% lower cost of energy, is a great deal for them.
Yeah, and that's a sales feature for their customers at that point, so you gotta help them with the product. Okay, that's good, so 1, 5, 2, 4, team 4.
I got all free. I got promoted.
You're not going to Goose Bay either, huh?
So I said to get the price, I acted like I would want to go 15%, but I could talk out 10. When it was it 5? Yeah, so I said I could, I wanted to do 15%, but I said the EPA, which you could say, which would be good for publicity. So because you're using less energy, the EPA loves that. It would be a good press release statement. So because it's EPA friendly, you could get sort of the EPA on your side. That would justify the cost going up. And the other company lost a big account, and we haven't. So for reasons that they didn't explain, they lost customers. So they shouldn't go with them, and they should go with us because we've been there and we're being consistent. So I didn't tell them about the 50 cents at all. I just said that we need to do 15%, but I would settle for less. Which was, yeah.
So,
So it was still over. And then let's see this. We just settled on carload. I didn't.
Yeah, got small shipments.
Yeah.
okay,
So not like a semi, but something like a car. I said not a Prius, maybe a Suburban full. So we were okay on that, but not a semi. And that we wanted to go and take over some of the margin because, like I said, our competitor lost accounts. So for why did you lose an account? Maybe you shouldn't trust them because they lost it, but we're here being consistent. So why don't you go with something that you trust already? And then, like I said, if you say that you're selling motors that reduce energy consumption, and you had a question about the performance, and I said you get the same power, and just doing air conditioning myself with refrigerants, they love, EPA loves to come out and say, here's a new thing that we love, less energy, ozone depleting, global warming.
SEER
potential,
ratings are everything
SEER
on it.
rating that they just are gonna change in 2023,
Yeah.
but.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know if we
Okay.
got in trouble, but
You felt like you did okay, right?
I went okay.
Okay. All right, so far we've got 4 teams that negotiated. You each found out different pieces of information. about your opponent, the person, and you really aren't enemies. You're a supplier-vendor relationship. Supplier-company customer relationship is important. So you weren't enemies, but you're both negotiating in your best interest. You're trying to negotiate in your best interest. You pointed out an interesting thing about the competitor. I don't know if the rest of you did or not, but that whole idea, that's an ethics question. Do you want to diss a competitor or do you not want to diss a competitor? I worked for one company that said it's almost a fireable offense if you breathe the competitor's name. That we don't want you talking about competitors. Not that it's a secret. It's we don't want you reinforcing their brand when you're talking to customers about their name. But pointing out this question, you planted a seed in the back of his mind because that competitor is going to go after their business. They lost an account. They're going to try to fill that, and they're going to go on price for one thing for sure because they've got capacity available now. And you put a lingering thought. They lost the account for a reason.
I didn't tell them we slowed down either. I don't want them thinking that we're slowing down. I want them thinking that we have options. So you lied to the customer. This is a good way to go. No, I'm teasing you. You didn't lie. Choosing what we say and how we say it and spinning it, these are all tools in negotiating, and they're valuable tools. So team 3, how'd you guys do? How'd that come out?
So I work at Costco. This is not in my job description. But I'm like 70% sure I just sold him the company because I gave up and he was pushy.
So you cashed out.
Yeah.
So the
No, she
negotiation.
didn't sell it to me, she gave it to me.
Oh. Okay, now that's a result I haven't heard before.
Dude, I
But
didn't even know like stocks were a part of it, and then he starts talking about that, and I'm like, sure.
I thought that it went into an acquisition thing. It went into a bankruptcy sale. Well done. You solved the problem. Now it's all their problem, right?
Exactly. The company's kind of not doing so hot anyways.
So an interesting thing, when we are looking at vendor-customer relationships, it is very often that we see exactly that kind of thing occurring. A company that's the vendor would like a retail point, would like a product line, and might be interested in acquiring your business. Vice versa. Companies that are doing well, doing successful, we call this vertical integration. The idea of buying their suppliers is a viable strategy. Vertical integration means so if you're upset with Sherwin-Williams, go find a paint company you buy and buy them. Now you own the supplier, you tell them what they're going to do, and you have a vested interest in their broader market at that point in time. And I'm not telling you to do that. I'm saying that that's a strategy that's a viable strategy. That one costs some money, but you can negotiate it. You could have sold based on part of the value of the assets that you had. You could spread it over time. Say I don't want a tax problem here. I don't want a lump sum payment. And you don't want to make a lump sum payment, so you can buy me out over time. And so you could have done something like that. But what a creative solution. Out of the box thinking for sure. The rest of us just were negotiating.
I might have done some bad salesman type things where I was like, I'll let you have all the stuff that you want for 51%.
Okay.
Everything that was on their list, I was like, there it is.
So there's more to negotiation. You didn't just give up. You got everything you wanted.
Yeah. And then I gave up.
but you kept 49%.
You're right.
So you kept 40. You don't have to do anything now. You just have to call them up and ask for a check. That's all you got to do now at this point. Now, so may not certainly creative, right? In negotiation, we're going to wrap up with 18-minute video on negotiation from the Harvard Project, Getting to Yes in the Real World. This is William Murray, who is a professor at Harvard and one of the authors of the book, Getting to Yes, and we're going to watch what he has to say about, and then we'll be done with our second topic. That's the topic of negotiation. We'll be starting back on our starting on our new topic of figuring out if something's true or not true.
Well, the subject of difficult negotiation reminds me of one of my favorite stories from the Middle East, of a man who left to his 3 sons 17 camels. And to the first son he left half the camels, to the second son he left a third of the camels, and to the youngest son he left a ninth of the camels. Well, 3 sons got into a negotiation. 17 doesn't divide by 2, it doesn't divide by 3, it doesn't divide by 9. Brotherly temper started to get strained. Finally, in desperation, they went and they consulted a wise old woman. The wise old woman thought about their problem for a long time, and finally she came back and said, well, I don't know if I can help you, but at least if you want, you can have my camel. So then they had 18 camels. The first son took his half of 18 is 9. The second son took his third, a third of 18 is 6. The youngest son took his ninth, a ninth of 18 is 2. You get 17. They had 1 camel left over. They gave it back to the wise old woman. Now, if you think about that story for a moment, I think it resembles a lot of the difficult negotiations we get involved in. They start off like 17 camels, no way to resolve it. Somehow what we need to do is step back from those situations, like that wise old woman, look at the situation through fresh eyes, and come up with an 18th camel. Now, finding that 18th camel in the world's conflict has been my life passion. I basically see humanity a bit like those 3 brothers. We're all one family. We know that scientifically. Thanks to the communications revolution, all the tribes on the planet, all 15,000 tribes, are in touch with each other. And it's a big family reunion. And yet, like many family reunions, it's not all peace and light. There's a lot of conflict. And the question is, how do we deal with our differences? How do we deal with our deepest differences, given the human propensity for conflict and the human genius at devising weapons of enormous destruction? That's the question. As I've spent the last better part of 3 decades, almost 4, traveling the world, trying to work, getting involved in conflicts ranging from Yugoslavia to the Middle East to Chechnya to Venezuela, some of the most difficult conflicts on the face of the planet, I've been asking myself that question. And I think I've found, in some ways, what is the secret to peace. It's actually surprisingly simple. It's not easy, but it's simple. It's not even new. It's maybe one of our most ancient human heritages. The secret to peace is us. It's us who act as a surrounding community around any conflict, who can play a constructive role. Let me give you just a story, an example. About 20 years ago, I was in South Africa working with the parties in that conflict, and I had an extra month, so I spent some time living with several groups of San Bushmen. I was curious about them, about the way in which they resolve conflict. Because after all, within living memory, they were hunters and gatherers, living pretty much like our ancestors lived for maybe 99% of the human story. And all the men have these poison arrows that they use for hunting, absolutely fatal. So how do they deal with their differences? Well, what I learned is whenever tempers rise in those communities, someone goes and hides the poison arrows out in the bush. And then everyone sits around in a circle like this, and they sit and they talk. And they talk. It may take 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, but they don't rest until they find a resolution, or better yet, a reconciliation. And if tempers are still too high, then they send someone off to visit some relatives. There's a cooling off period. Well, that system is, I think, probably the system that kept us alive to this point, given our human tendencies. That system I call the third side. Because if you think about it, normally when we think of conflict, when we describe it, there's always 2 sides. You know, it's Arabs versus Israelis, labor versus management, husband versus wife, Republicans versus Democrats. But what we don't often see is that there's always a third side. And the third side of the conflict is us. It's the surrounding community. It's the friends, the allies, the family members, the neighbors. And we can play an incredibly constructive role. Perhaps the most fundamental way in which the third side can help is to remind the parties of what's really at stake. you know, for the sake of the kids, for the sake of the family, for the sake of the community, for the sake of the future, let's stop fighting for a moment and start talking. Because the thing is, when we're involved in conflict, it's very easy to lose perspective. It's very easy to react. Human beings, we're reaction machines. And as the saying goes, when angry, you will make the best speech you will ever regret. And so the third side reminds us of that. The third side helps us go to the balcony, which is a metaphor for a place of perspective where we can keep our eyes on the prize. Let me tell you a little story from my own negotiating experience. Some years ago, I was involved as a facilitator in some very tough talks between the leaders of Russia and the leaders of Chechnya. There was a war going on, as you know. And we met in The Hague, in the Peace Palace, in the same room where the Yugoslav War Crimes Tribunal was taking place. And the talks got off to a rather rocky start when the vice president of Chechnya began by pointing at the Russians and said, "You should stay right here in your seats because you're going to be on trial for war crimes." And then he went on, and then he turned to me and said, "You're an American. Look at what you Americans are doing in Puerto Rico." And my mind started racing. Oh, Puerto Rico, what do I know about Puerto Rico? I started reacting. But then I tried to remember to go to the balcony. And then when he paused and everyone looked at me for a response, from a balcony perspective, I was able to thank him for his remarks and say, "I appreciate your criticism of my country, and I take it as a sign that we're among friends and can speak candidly to one another. And what we're here to do is not to talk about Puerto Rico or the past. We're here to do is to see if we can figure out a way to stop the suffering and the bloodshed in Chechnya." The conversation got back on track. That's the role of the third side, is to help the parties go to the balcony. Now let me take you for a moment to what's widely regarded as the world's most difficult conflict, and the most impossible conflict, is the Middle East. The question is, where's the third side there? How could we possibly go to the balcony? Now, I don't pretend to have an answer to the Middle East conflict, but I think I've got a first step, literally a first step, something that any one of us could do as third-siders. Let me just ask you one question first. How many of you in the last years have ever found yourself worrying about the Middle East and wondering what anyone could do? Just out of curiosity, how many of you? Okay, so the great majority of us. And here, it's so far away. Why do we pay so much attention to this conflict? Is it the number of deaths? There are 100 times more people who die in a conflict in Africa than in the Middle East. No, it's because of the story, because we feel personally involved in that story. Whether we're Christians, Muslims, or Jews, religious or non-religious, we feel we have a personal stake in it. Stories matter. As an anthropologist, I know that. Stories are what we use to transmit knowledge, to give meaning to our lives. That's what we tell here at TED. We tell stories. Stories are the key. And so my question is yes, let's try and resolve the politics there in the Middle East, but let's also take a look at the story. Let's try to get at the root of what it's all about. Let's see if we can apply the third side to it. What would that mean? What is the story there? Now, as anthropologists, we know that every culture has an origin story. What's the origin story of the Middle East? In a phrase, it's 4,000 years ago, a man and his family walked across the Middle East, and the world has never been the same since. That man, of course, was Abraham. And what he stood for was unity, the unity of the family. He's the father of us all. But it's not just what he stood for, it's what his message was. His basic message was unity too, the interconnectedness of it all, the unity of it all. And his basic value was respect, was kindness towards strangers. That's what he's known for, is hospitality. So in that sense, he's the symbolic third side of the Middle East. He's the one who reminds us that we're all part of a greater whole. Now now think about that for a moment. Today we face the scourge of terrorism. What is terrorism? Terrorism is basically taking an innocent stranger and treating them as an enemy whom you kill in order to create fear. What's the opposite of terrorism? It's taking an innocent stranger and treating them as a friend whom you welcome into your home in order to sow and create understanding or respect or love. So what if, then, you took the story of Abraham which is a third side story. What if that could be actually because Abraham stands for hospitality. What if that could be an antidote to terrorism? What if that could be a vaccine against religious intolerance? How would you bring that story to life? Now, it's not enough just to tell a story. That's powerful. But people need to experience the story. They need to be able to live the story. How would you do that? And that was my thinking of how would you do that? And that's what comes to the first step here. Because the simple way to do that is you go for a walk. You go for a walk in the footsteps of Abraham. You retrace the footsteps of Abraham. Because walking has a real power. You know, as an anthropologist, walking is what made us human. Walking, it's funny, when you walk side by side in the same common direction. Now, if I were to come to you face to face and come this close to you, you would feel threatened. But if I walk shoulder to shoulder, even touching shoulders, it's no problem. Who fights while they walk? That's why in negotiations often, when things get tough, people go for walks in the woods. So the idea came to me of, what about inspiring a path, a route? Think the Silk Route, think the Appalachian Trail that followed in the footsteps of Abraham. People said, that's crazy, you can't retrace the footsteps of Abraham, it's too insecure, you got to cross all these borders, it goes across 10 different countries in the Middle East because it unites them all. And so we studied the idea at Harvard, we did our due diligence, and then a few years ago, a group of us, about 25 of us from 10 different countries, decided to see if we could retrace the footsteps of Abraham, going from his original birthplace in the city of Urfa in southern Turkey, northern Mesopotamia. And we then took a bus and took some walks and went to Haran, where in the Bible he sets off on his journey. Then we crossed the border into Syria, went to Aleppo, which turns out is named after Abraham. We went to Damascus, which has a long history associated with Abraham. We then came to northern Jordan, to Jerusalem, which is all about Abraham, to Bethlehem, and finally to the place where he's buried in Hebron. So effectively, we went from womb to tomb. We showed it could be done. It was an amazing journey. Let me ask you a question. How many of you have had the experience of being in a strange neighborhood or strange land, and a total stranger, perfect stranger, comes up to you and shows you some kindness, maybe invites you into their home, gives you a drink, gives you a coffee, gives you a meal? How many of you have ever had that experience? That's the essence of the Abraham path. But that's what you discover. You go into these villages in the Middle East where you expect hostility, and you get the most amazing hospitality, all associated with Abraham. In the name of Father Ibrahim, let me offer you some food. So what we discovered is that Abraham is not just a figure out of a book for those people. He's alive. He's a living presence. And to make a long story short, in the last couple of years now, thousands of people have begun to walk parts of the path of Abraham in the Middle East, enjoying the hospitality of the people there. They've begun to walk in Israel, in Palestine, in Jordan, in Turkey, in Syria. It's an amazing experience. Men, women, young people, old people, more women than men, actually, interestingly. For those who can't walk, who are unable to get there right now, people started to organize walks in cities, in their own communities. In Cincinnati, for instance, they organized a walk from a church to a mosque to a synagogue, and then all had an Abrahamic meal together. It was Abraham that day. In Sao Paulo, Brazil, it's become an annual event for thousands of people to run in a virtual Abraham Path run, uniting the different communities. The media love it. They really adore it. They lavish attention on it because it's visual and it spreads the idea, this idea of Abrahamic hospitality, of kindness towards strangers. And just a couple weeks ago, there was an NPR story on it. Last month, there was a piece in the Guardian, in the Manchester Guardian, about it, two whole pages, and they quoted a villager who said, "This walk connects us to the world." He said it was like a light that went on in our lives. It brought us hope. And so that's what it's about. But it's not just about psychology, it's about economics. Because as people walk, they spend money. And this woman right here, Ahmad, is a woman who lives on the path in northern Jordan. She's desperately poor. She's partially blind. Her husband can't work. She's got 7 kids. But one she can do is cook. And so she's begun to cook for some groups of walkers who come through the village and have a meal in her home. They sit on the floor. She doesn't even have a tablecloth. She makes the most delicious food that's fresh from the herbs in the surrounding countryside. And so more and more walkers have come. And lately, she's begun to earn an income to support her family. And so she told our team there, she said, "You have made me visible in a village where people were once ashamed to look at me." That's the potential of the Abraham Path. There are literally hundreds of those kind of communities across the Middle East, across the path. The potential is basically to change the game. And to change the game, you have to change the frame, the way we see things, to change the frame from hostility to hospitality, from terrorism to tourism. And in that sense, the Abraham Path is a game changer. Let me just show you one thing. I have a little acorn here that I picked up while I was walking on the path earlier this year. Now, the acorn is associated with the oak tree, of course, grows into an oak tree, which is associated with Abraham. The path right now is like an acorn. It's still in its early phase. What would the oak tree look like? Well, I think back to my childhood, a good part of which I spent after being born here in Chicago, I spent in Europe. If you had been in the ruins of, say, London in 1945 or Berlin, and you had said, 60 years from now, this is going to be the most peaceful, prosperous part of the planet, people would have thought you were certifiably insane. But they did it thanks to a common identity, Europe, and a common economy. So my question is, if it could be done in Europe, why not in the Middle East? Why not thanks to a common identity, which is the story of Abraham, and thanks to a common economy that would be based in good part on tourism? So let me conclude then by saying that in the last 35 years, as I've worked in some of the most dangerous, difficult, and intractable conflicts around the planet, I have yet to see one conflict that I felt could not be transformed. It's not easy, of course, but it's possible. It was done in South Africa. It was done in Northern Ireland. It could be done anywhere. It simply depends on us. It depends on us taking the third side. So let me invite you to consider taking the third side, even as a very small step. We're about to take a break in a moment. Just go up to someone who's from a different culture, a different country, a different ethnicity, some difference, and engage them in a conversation. Listen to them. That's a third side act. That's walking Abraham's path. After a TED Talk, why not a TED Walk? So let me just leave you with 3 things. One is, the secret to peace is the third side. The third side is us. Each of us, with a single step, can take the world, can bring the world a step closer to peace. There's an old African proverb that goes, when spider webs unite, they can halt even a lion. If we're able to unite our third side webs of peace, we can even halt the lion of war. Thank you very much.
So why did I call that, although it's written by the guy that wrote the book, Getting to Yes, why did I call that a negotiation video? I mean, what do you think?
It's just taking a different perspective.
It is taking a different perspective. That's been profound to me, the concept. I suggest you read the book, Getting to Yes. It's a good negotiating book for the kind of things that we do, not the kinds of things he does. I mean, I don't feel I'm in that league. I don't want to have to have the pressure and the weight of those kinds of negotiations between countries that we've talked about and conflict we've talked about here. But when he draws something there that I think is unbelievable, we all agree with the 2 circles at the very beginning of conflict, of party A, party B, and they're negotiating something. Maybe hostilely, maybe peaceful negotiation, but there's a conflict. They want a higher price, and you want to hold your price. They want deliveries, spread out, and you want to dump delivery on them. And we just went through that. That's not a world conflict, but it's still a conflict. It's a difference of opinion. It's a difference of interest. And he says, in the book, he says, go to the balcony. And he's presenting the conflict as if it's taking place on stage. It's a Shakespeare conflict, and we've got maybe one of the epic plays that we remember happening on the stage, and two parties are at difference of opinion, and it's drama. He says, during the drama, if you're in drama, don't get engaged for a minute. Go to the balcony. And that's what he's meaning. Go to the balcony where you've got the front row seat. You're looking over the stage. You're watching it from above. And so for a moment, put the conflict on pause and step away from it, step above it, and look down from the balcony. That's what he talks about in the book. He mentioned to go to the balcony there. So I always viewed this third party that he's talking about differently than how he drew it. This is profound to me. It's been profound to me. Because when I think of a third party or a third view, I think of this. We go to a mediator in a marriage that's going bad. We go to a third party. We go to somebody outside our family to talk about a little quarrel that's going on. We go to the homeowners association to talk about a conflict with your neighbor's garbage cans. We go to this third party. We do that in business too. And that's how I drew it. That's not how he drew it. Do you remember how he drew it? It was all around it. It was like the third party is this. That is profound. And that is something maybe worth remembering in your game plan and thinking about. How does that apply to the conflict that we're in? And maybe even more importantly, how often are we in this? We're the us that he's talking about. We are the observers. We're the third neighbor. And we're part of the community around. And in business, this is very helpful. If you're the sales guy and you're on the front line and you're fighting for your company, do you have a third party?
Nope.
Well, you got to find one, and in reality, it could be that your engineering team and their engineering team really are the us. They're not on the front line of that negotiation, but they got things that they need to see happen, and they got ways to help you make it happen. Maybe we can involve a third party elsewhere in the organization as the us. And in your conflicts that you might be thinking about that you're having, or your negotiations that you need to do, think about, is there an us? Is there a third, can we involve a third party that will help us if we're party A or party B? One of the things that Party A and Party B need to do, and this is something that came out in your exercises you just did. Party A has certain things that they feel very strongly about, and they have other things that they don't care so much about. Party B has things they feel very strongly about, and some stuff that they don't feel so strongly about. Xerox calls this discovery process needs benefits selling. So if you're a salesperson training to sell, understand needs and understand benefits. And if you can translate your benefits to meet their needs, you win. The only way you can do that is to discover what their needs are. That was the hidden part on the back page, right? And some of you started into that, trying to discover what the other party's needs are. And sometimes the way to learn that is to flat out ask them. But we're trained to be good negotiators to not tell. So don't let them know what our needs are. I mean, the Art of War says, act strong when you're weak. Don't reveal your needs. Don't let them see you're limping, because we know that's who gets cut out of the herd, right? If the weak person in the herd. So we are very protective of what we feel strongly about and what we don't feel strongly about. So that's where a third party can be very useful to us. The community, we can go to the community and learn things about what they feel strongly about and don't feel strongly about. In a husband and wife conflict, the community that's around them could be all their friends. And if I really want to know what's bugging her and she's not telling me, do you think her girlfriend knows? Pretty good chance there's been text going back and forth between my partner and her best friend. That best friend's in the community. Not saying to involve them, drag them in. I'm saying the us around us could be a key to us solving our conflict, right? And so that's what he's just tipping the window open for us a little bit to look at that and see how that might empower us in our negotiating skills. And just by drawing the model differently, that opened my brain up unbelievably to this. I wish I'd have known that 20 years. I wish I'd have thought of it from that perspective 20 years ago or longer. It's changed my perspective on the world around me, both privately and work. It's helped me in understanding that our conflict is in the middle of a sea of friends that we all have that can help us. Giving information, helping us understand what the other party feels strongly about. If you'd have had some of you almost took the approach of saying, here, Steve said it's a secret, but I don't care. Read the backside of my page. I want to read the backside of your page. If you'd have started out with that, you'd have both had much more information, and you could have mapped, how do we both win? How do we both do this? Because I'm not going to argue with what's important to you. I'm going to accept what's important to you. You have to accept what's important to me. How do we craft it? And it could be that an acquisition was the best way to do that. Could very well be. That puts you both on exactly the same team. So you no longer have conflicting interest. You've merged the interest into one party. Maybe. I'm not saying, marry the people you're arguing with. I don't know if that's the right way to do it. But we're going to wrap on negotiations on that. Grab a laptop, if you would, and we're going to look at a couple of web pages. And you've got a handout that has a list of these web pages, and I'm going to put it on the board so you can copy some of it. But this is the page that says Critical Evaluation of a Web Page, Exercises. I will see if I can find that. What time do you have to leave to go to your tank?
I gotta be here all class.
Okay. I didn't know if you had to do a cheat sheet or something or what.
No, that's what I did before.
You're all ready to go.
I hope so.
All right, if you've got the handout, then I'm just going to go around the room and assign you these websites in order. And we'll just go with the count that we are, or no, we just went to 1 to 5. So Eli, you're 1, 2, Josie 3, Brad 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So I want you to pull up. It's not a click, you're going to have to type it in. So hopefully you can read this, or you've got access to the cheat sheet. There was just a copy here, they're all gone. So hopefully you can share with a neighbor if you don't or can't read that. I can try to blow them up a little bit. I want you to go to your website, and I want you to evaluate that website. And we're going to go around the room and talk about them for a minute. Got a dead hot dog?
No.
Oh, get close enough to
Vision
read.
wasn't.
right there. As a teacher, there's a better way to have done this than I did, so I apologize for that. I should have had it on a flash drive pre-installed on each of the laptops, right? So you can just click on it. But, and if you've got a busted link, you can take another one. Number 11, number 12 is available. If for some reason I typed it wrong or you typed it wrong, you get a busted link. We'll give you a chance. Most of these are not long web pages. Most of them are fairly short. And I don't, like the city of Mankato, you don't have to evaluate all the links the cities put on, but I see a few of you are done at this point in time. Let's see if I can figure out how to do this. Control, click. Eli, this is the one you were looking at. What do you decide about this?
Someone did a little too much acid back in their hippie days.
Straight out of 1988.
And really ran with it.
So is it real or is it?
It could be a beautiful piece of satire, or it could be someone legitimately taking it seriously, in which case they're nuts. Seems like they believe in it.
So it's got some things that make the website look official, right? And somebody could be duped on that. It's potentially right. It's a new use for aluminum foil. Well, you know, a modern version of that is we have a lot of people that are suggesting we have shielding on our wallet.
Yeah.
Right? People that are shielding their garages so their car doesn't get broken down in an EMP. It's the same area. I'm not saying it's bad or wrong. I'm not taking a part on that. I'm saying it's possible that will work. It's possible that it won't. Chevrolet claims that the windshield on the C8 Corvette deflects police radar. I don't know if it does or not. Most radar is laser at this point, and it scatters laser for sure. It's also the Wi-Fi antenna that's inside the glass, and it won't run the gate on where I live. So I don't know. It may be, but you know, people make claims and stuff like that. I want to see more proof than one webpage, right? Let's look at another one and see what you think about this. This one is Joelle's. This is a. That's not what it is. Is that what you pulled
So
up?
click on the critical evaluation page link. Yeah, it didn't go straight to it, so go to the red button up there. And then it'll pull up the other list, and then go over to the right. And there, wait,
Wow, you went to a lot of work.
yeah,
Okay, right
there
there?
it is,
Okay, there we go. All right. Ban dihydrogen monoxide, and this is, that's what the website says, the header that I printed out on it. It's got some quotes from some government agencies. Jim Carrey, if you remember him. So all this stuff, they've got an organization, a coalition to ban DHMO. They've got a website that we're not on at this point, but this is their paper. Other websites, including the World Health Organization and Amazon.com. Can't be wrong, right?
4 billion people.
So you're looking at numbers, thinking that they're making claims.
Yeah, 4 billion.
So backing up a step in your mind process, what is dihydrogen monoxide? Water. It's water. So the claims that they make about where water's bad, we smile at, right? It's like, okay, this has to be a tongue-in-cheek site, right? Has to be. Maybe yes, maybe no. Everything you read on the internet is not true. The danger, it's often used as an industrial solvent and coolant. It's used in nuclear power plants.
I totally bought into it. And I'm like the biggest cynic there is. I was just like looking at all of the information. I'm like, damn.
So most of the statements are true, and you can kind of laugh about it a little bit. But you can also, we can all get duped on stuff like this.
Well, I was only thought it was a scam when I saw who was involved.
Okay. All right, then we spotted it. All right. Or Josie, what?
It's about a biography about a robot that fought with Teddy Roosevelt.
Okay, do you think it's real or do you think it's a fake?
No, it's a illustrated hardcover book.
Okay, so this is somebody's website they made up about an event that didn't occur in history and made a web page of it, and you can cite it on your essay paper, and probably not a good idea, right? Because it's somebody made that up. The fourth one we looked at, the Burmese mountain dog. What do you got there?
Well, I know about 2 types of breeds of dogs. I'm a cat person, so I mean, my knowledge of dogs is very, very minuscule. So if I got finessed, it's because I'm not a dog person, but seems pretty credible. I don't know the difference. I haven't really looked at a German Shepherd that hard compared to this dog to see if this is actually legit or is this actually just a different little off mix of a German Shepherd. But the facts seem pretty promising. The years and everything so specific that they go into extreme detail about every aspect of the dog. So it seems pretty reasonable, but I'm not a dog person, so that's the only reason.
That's a pretty good caveat. They do say a lot about it. The reality of it is, the American Kennel Society cannot find information about a Burmese mountain dog. That seems to be a German Shepherd.
So it is a German, it's a real breed, but different dog we're talking about?
Yeah, different picture.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's where my knowledge of dogs.
That's fine. But our point is that we do our research, right? We try to find what we can about whether something is fact or not. Let's go through, we've got another one on, if we look up dihydrogen monoxide, we will find more than just those two sites. Larry, what'd you see?
I clicked on the controversy thing to see what it was. That I'm all in for conspiracy theories and whatnot. So I was reading into it, and they were not giving answers on what they were being accused of. So it sounded legit to me. You know, I'm like, okay, there's something to this.
These are more on the edge where, we can, that is water and, what exactly are they doing? But the point of this really is more, a lot of the stuff we're looking at, we don't know. We aren't experts in the field. Like Brad said, I'm not an expert, so I look something up and I go show it to my boss and say, we ought to try this. And we got pulled into a rabbit hole, and so, sometimes people have good intentions and it's bad information. Sometimes it looks like good information. Andrew, what'd you see?
Well, initially, you're like, all right, these guys are trying to go to the moon, but the first thing that popped in my mind was that little thing across the top that says, this site is an old friend from Google's past, kept in its original form.
Yeah.
And then I started to read it, and, I want to go live on the G-Cheese.
Yeah.
I'm about 6 pages in, and it's just a bunch of nonsense.
Yeah. It's stuff like, Craigslist has a best of Craigslist, and if you look at that, you'll find stuff that's just way out there. It's whacked. It's stuff put it on. People put stuff on sometimes to create effect, and they don't intend for it to be true.
Right.
They put it on as a joke, but we don't want to get sucked into the joke unless we know it's a joke, right? And so we don't want our employees to get sucked into, this is the best thing, we gotta try, we have to do this, when in fact, maybe we shouldn't. How about this guy, Jacopo Pogobanzi?
Yeah. I started out clicking on his biography with Life and Times. I mean, just learn about his life, how he grew up, where he grew up at, and what inspired him on his painting. But I don't know.
Do you think he existed, or did you get that far?
I didn't get that far. I read that it was talking about how they don't. It starts out in the very, very beginning, that first sentence, how they don't really know a lot about him. So it's kind of 50-50.
So that gave him a break right there.
Yeah.
Well, we might want to search that a little bit more. Brennan, what'd you find out about Mankato here?
It's weird. There's a notification at the top of the site's been hacked by Sheik Yarguti. That is an album that was released in 1979. They say that the weather's never dropped below 70 degrees, but there's also snow year-round.
I've been to Mankato and
Quote unquote, 24/7, 365, lots of snow.
Yeah.
The picture is fake. If you actually go to Google and look at it, this place is like, I don't know, probably the 50th of St. George, like the tiniest little town.
Yeah. I live south of Mankato. You've been to Mankato.
yeah, they have popcorn and stuff.
They got good fishing if you like fishing. There are a lot of little lakes around. But none of this stuff is Mankato. And the site looks kind of legit. It says citymankato.us. You think that's got to be an official site, but it's not the site. And as you noticed, it's very plain.
The website's also
It's
used.
been hijacked, and so that one's not going to help us. I want to look at a couple more. We got history of Fisher Price airplane. What do you think?
First sentence below the picture kind of gave away when it says Stalin had reiterated it's called one of the toughest engineering problems facing our nation. A plane that could carry a dad, mom, and their family and the dog to a playground.
But they quote the Russian aerospace place.
It does look legit though.
It
But
does?
some of the pictures on the left side are pretty funny.
Yeah.
Like the first flight right there.
Yeah. Boardroom, 1969. I mean, Fisher Price did make an airplane, right? It just didn't, not one that flew. One your little kid would maybe have. Let's look at one more. The Ova Prima Foundation. What did you find, Jake?
Well, under my first observation, I thought the site was a little dated. So it does have copyright 1998 on it. Most of all the links kind of work. I kind of read through the mission statement a little bit, and just the name Over Prima Foundation. I was like, well, what is this? You know? And so just I read the sentence in the second paragraph, and it says that their objective is to build a body of scientific evidence that will shed the light on the chicken and the egg controversy. And I was like, there is no way in hell we're making money or getting people to donate money so that they can answer this question.
Right.
And
Okay.
so I figured it was fake. So then I Google searched it, and yep, it's fake.
Yeah, it's fake. So we find, let's see if I've got, no, I'm not gonna, you had a handout that you picked up that looked like a scientific research paper that was about the Wizard of Oz and the tornado that ripped through Kansas, and they documented this deadly tornado, and it's printed like a research paper, and I had that as a handout. If you are interested in it, it's still here. There's some copies on your way out. You can look at that one. Looks like a research paper. Now I have a real one. Those are some fake ones. I'm going to take us a couple minutes on the handouts for today. There are two handouts that you had. One of them has an eye chart on the back of it, and the other one is the one I want you to scan through and take a look at. This one is a real product, and I want you to put your critical evaluation hat on and read this paper. I started it at page 4. This is the real, it's called an IFU, Instructions for Use of the Clinical Paper from Allergan, who's a contact lens manufacturing company. They make this product. It's a drug. You've seen it advertised on TV. It's called Vuity. And it's the one that if you're aging and need reader glasses, you can buy this medicine, put it drops in your eyes, and the claim is you won't need reader glasses anymore. This is the scientific research that Allergan puts in this prescription. I have this prescription. This bottle, this is mine. You're going to read it and see. And this bottle is $75, and I'll pass it around. You can look at it and see the volume, how many drops are in there, and one of you can calculate how much a gallon Allergan is selling this product for. This is it's not over the counter. It's prescription only, and that's what this is. Pass it around. I want it back. Because that's an unopened bottle. But what check it out. And so I want you to scan this is the real document that comes with that medicine from the pharmacy. And I want you to look at the claims. I want you to look at the results. And their test was that you get a 3-line improvement on what, they didn't call it by name, but it's the Snelling eye chart. It's the eye chart. It's this one right here. So they're promising a 3-line improvement for a significant number of patients that use the drug. So this is the real clinical research. This was a phase 3 trial that Allergan submitted to the FDA that proves that that drug works. But I want you to interpret it. This is not a fake, that's the real paper. But I want you to parse the data that they present and give me your thoughts on it in the next 5 minutes or so. So spend a few minutes. You don't have to really read the whole document. You can if you'd like to. Scan through it and then find the claims of what kind of outcomes that the clinical studies, what kind of claims they think, what kind of improvement can I get, what percent of the population gets that improvement, and how long does it last?
And they're
That's
selling
it.
this for $75.
You gotta get this.
$75.
Risk of retin
It's
detachment.
over there. It looks like this right
Yeah, you risk of retina detachment. Yeah. In case.
It's like,
Do you need one?
yeah, I'm trying to find that.
What,
It looks like this.
here's the paper. Oh, you're looking for the picture. It was right here. So did somebody pick up 2 copies of the eye chart?
No, he needs this part right here. He needs the other one.
Oh, this one.
Yeah.
That's it. Yep. Oh, that's because I picked up a stack of them. I've got 4 or 5 of them. Sorry, guys.
This is too small to read. Not even.
Need drops to read it. That's the
Yeah.
whole idea.
For real.
All right, so we don't go overtime. Clinical studies, they had 2 of them. 30-day, you had to use the drops for 30 days, not once. You had to use them for 30 days. It was a double-blinded or double-masked, they said. Vehicle-controlled studies. A Gemini 1 and a Gemini 2 is what they named. Total of 750 participants aged 40 to 55 years old. So what do you notice there on the part of the major pharmaceutical company? It's a pretty young target market. Because they probably aren't going to get as good of results in an older population. Probably. So by selecting your age group in the study, you can bias the results in your direction. All right, number one. Not saying they did, but I'm just saying that's what we see. In both studies, the proportions were of the participants gaining 3 lines or more on this Snelling eye chart without losing more than 1 line when you had your glasses on. That's their outcome. So how many got that outcome? What percentage? On study 1 of Gemini 1, 31% got a good result. What that says is 2/3 of the people did not. Study 2, 26% got a good result. What that says is 3/4 of the people did not. But still, that's enough claim, the p-value of less than 0.01, that means that's a confidence level, that's a 10% confidence level. Usually we're looking at it's a 10% defect, error, that's an error percentage. Usually we look at 95% confidence, which is 5% error. That's a 10% error in their study, but it shows that there is statistical significance to that. Now, the next question, so you have to take the drug for 30 days for that to get that result, to be in the 1/3 or 1/4 that get a good result. And then what do you see in the print that's too fine to read? How many hours does the result last?
10.
They tested at 3, but look at the slope. You know, you get immediate results for the first hour, and then at 3 hours, your result is dropped off to the first dot, and at 6 hours, it's dropped off way off. So what that's saying is it's going to work. If it works for you, it's going to work for a while. 5 or 6 hours. I get up at 5:30 or 6. I put it in. When is the result going to be needed?
About 10 o'clock.
About 10 o'clock, it's going to be waning. By noon, it's going to be gone. When do I teach this class?
5.
So it's no value by now. There was also a question of what does it do with contact lenses. They say you're supposed to take your contacts out, put the drops in, and put the contacts back in. So I run an experiment to see if you have to do that. My results is no different. Yeah, I can put them on the contacts without taking my contacts out. It goes around. What is the risk of this drug? Detached retina, eating a hole in your contacts, because I'm doing it off-label, right? I'm doing it appropriately. So overall, while the marketing claims on TV are, yeah, I can see better for the first hour after I put them in without glasses. I can see most of the morning without glasses. If I put the drops in, what happens if I put the drops in twice a day? Doesn't say I can't. In fact, I'm surprised it doesn't say I can't, because I would use twice as much product, right? And how much is the product worth to Allergan? There are 3,785.4 milliliters per gallon. There's 2.5 mLs in that bottle. So this divided by 2.5 is 1,514 bottles per gallon of product, $75 a bottle. Allergan's making $113,000 per gallon of this product that they're making. It's good to be a pharmaceutical company.
Yeah.
It's way good. And so it's an example of critical evaluation. Looking at the study that's published, accepted by the FDA as fact, and then but the fact is it doesn't change my life like they want it to make you believe. It does work. For me, I'm one of the third that I get the improvement on. 2/3 don't. So that's even worse. That's almost, we got an ethical question. Would you market that product to the global environment if you knew that only worked on 1/3 of the people that tried it? And the answer is, if you're a shareholder, you'd probably try it. And let them figure it out. If it doesn't work for you, don't spend another $75, right?
Well, yeah, that's probably their whole thought process.
Could be.
$75, you're out one time if it doesn't
Could be.
work. But for those that do, they've got a solution for 5 hours
It's
a day.
way cheaper than gambling with the LASIK.
may vary.
That doesn't work for
Yeah.
everybody either.
Absolutely. If you go in laser treatment, it costs thousands of dollars. That doesn't work for everybody. I'm not dissing Allergan. They're a preferred supplier to me for the products that they make. I'm not trying to do that. I just use that as an example of looking at something that's in the real world around us. And for our point of view, our job is to critically evaluate. Are the manufacturer's claims, first, are they true? And I think they probably are true. But go into it with your eyes open, saying, okay, this is what they're claiming. They're not claiming 100%. When I buy it, I assume it's going to work for me. Don't. Say, okay, I'm going to take their claims, and I'm going to buy this product, and we're going to see if this works for our company. We're going to see if this solution works for our cabinets that we're spraying. You know, we want to see if this product does what, for us, what the blender of the solution says it's supposed to do. So critically look at stuff. The web pages, all web pages aren't true, right? And I gave you some ridiculous ones as examples. There's a bunch of sites on the back of that handout that you could also type in that translate to these handouts that are that is training from Harvard and the New York Times and Cornell and other suppliers of how we should be teaching ourselves to evaluate information that we get on the internet. It is not all true. And our job is to sort it and to teach the people on our teams how we sort it, teach them how to sort it, teach them not to be gullible and automatically believe what a trusted Allergan manufacturer is saying about a product. We have to look at it and evaluate it for our own application or for our own thing. So I'm not promoting the product and I'm not dissing the product. I'm just saying, let's understand the research for what it's actually saying and then deciding if we want to try it or not. And you guys, I know you guys don't have bad eyes, so you don't need that. But every other product that we have has similar stuff that we should be looking at. And don't get scared because it's technical jargon. It always is technical jargon. But somewhere in there is an explanation that you can sort out and you can understand. And you can look at what the data really says. Lots of times what they claim is a big improvement is not that big of an improvement when you actually look at it. Because my next question was, if it only gives me 3 lines of improvement, is that enough? As you look at the eye chart, that's a personal decision. You know, if you know, my life, I've spent most of my life not being able to read any of those lines. You know, and so stuff looks blurry to me a lot of times. And so I fortunately have eye correction, as some of you do, and I can read most of it. But there are days where I can't. And so, you know, that we have to decide for ourselves. I said early, it's only 7 minutes early. I'm sorry about that, guys. But it's early enough. We're going to look at the video on 7 businesses that never fail when we have our next class. Have a great weekend.
Well, what are we supposed to read in here?
Oh, you're supposed to read the 2 articles and read these 2 compensation articles.
Okay.
Compensation benefits, and be prepared next week to talk about why the Titanic sank. I'd like to see your little presentation. I would like to have a discussion. We all will have different results. There's not a known right and wrong. There are viewpoints and perspectives. It does not have to be a PowerPoint. I just want to know what your root cause conclusions are. And so we will start that process on Tuesday. And if we don't finish on Tuesday, we'll finish it on Thursday. Have a great weekend. Be safe. It's still summer though.
Yeah.
Good luck tonight. Denver's on at 9:30 at Station 2 if you want some entertainment.